Hello, YouTubers. This is Ina's reality TV blogger. Hope you guys are having an amazing day today. Today, I'm going to be discussing what ultimately led to the demise and eventually the collapse of the Black Alliance on Survivor 41. I first want to say I'm not going to be doing any comparisons to Big Brother 23's The Cookout Alliance because I feel it would be a disservice to the Cookout. I feel that there are a lot of differences, and I also feel as though since Survivor 41 filmed months in advance before we even knew there was going to be a potential for a Black Alliance, I don't feel that we can really accurately compare it in the same realm. And ultimately, one of the alliances actually carried out their mission to ensure that there was a Black winner, and they all stayed together until Final Six, and then they all went after each other, whereas this Black Alliance in Survivor 41 couldn't even make it, to even, go to Final Four together. It was just too toxic. It was too much drama. The number one issue, first and foremost, was the drama between Deshaun and Shan. They could never be on, the same accord or agree to disagree on something. It's fine if they wanted different people in the tribe voted out. However, the communication and how they interacted with each other was just so cringe. And then they put it on full display in front of everybody, not caring who was around. So that gave people who were not at the time a part of that power alliance ammo to start to pick at different things to see who they can get to flip and have them turn on each other, because it was very easy to infiltrate. And at one point, Ricard technically was a part of this alliance, and that's why they were the Power Five. And, it just all fell apart, and it didn't have to. Next, the issue at hand, specifically regarding Deshaun and Shan, is their refusal to let go of their quote unquote plus ones, of their people that they view as their allies, as their numbers, to help facilitate certain vote outs. Shan, for whatever reason, was never getting rid of Ricard or never letting go of him at any point, anytime soon. Regardless of what she says. Now, Ricard obviously had a different feeling towards Shan about that, but Shan basically always prefaced everything saying that Ricard was her number one. Deshaun always wanted to keep Heather and Erica around, who were former Luvu, because he had cultivated relationships with them. Unfortunately, we didn't see that on the show. However, he was always trying to make sure that they were safe and that they were in the mix and nothing was happening to them. And that is a problem when you're trying to establish a Power 4, Power 5 alliance that's supposed to all go to the end together. At some point, you are going to have to lose these other allies, because ultimately that is not, they're not ultimately in your alliance. That's the whole point of it all. But specifically that led to the demise of ultimately Shan and Liana, and then Danny going out back to back to back. It starts and ends with Shan and Liana. They're ultimately at fault for the demise of that entire week. Shan for bragging in front of anybody and everybody about their alliance. Never dispersing into pairs, always just meeting as a 4 or a 5 in front of everybody. Just very, very over the top and arrogant. Like, just why couldn't you separate and do everything in private? Because that was giving people like Xander and other people opportunities to strategize with others and ultimately infiltrate, and whoever was going to flip on whomever first was going to be the first to go. Danny and Deshaun, their plan to blindside Ricard ultimately was the catalyst of everything that collapsed for this alliance. They specifically told Liana not to tell Shan about this blindside, or if they do tell her, they wanted to tell her collectively as a group, but to not tell Shan because Shan's going to immediately go to Ricard without having the proper context. And ultimately, Liana did not listen because she felt that Shan was her number one. So she just ran and told Shan. But Liana knows that Shan's number one is always Ricard. So Ricard is always going to be primary over Liana, and Liana should know that Shan already aired her out when, they got to the merge, and she aired her out in front of Tiffany, her tribe mate, telling her that she had an advantage. So there's already been, messiness and unprovoked things that were said that could completely destroyed other relationships in the process that Shan kind of was the catalyst for. And ultimately it came back to bite. And, Shan telling Ricard and doing all of this before the immunity challenge was just very poor strategic moves on both Liana and Shan's part. Why would you tell somebody that, even if they are your ally, that all these people are coming for them? Why didn't you ever think that there wouldn't be a blowback on you? Because if they go, you're also the biggest threat. And why didn't you put together, okay, if I tell them this, there's a risk that he can turn it on me and make me the target? Why wasn't that going through Shan's mastermind mind? So once, Shan, of course, tells this to Ricard, she's thinking, oh, I'm looking out for my number one. And Ricard's thinking, why would you tell me something like this? Because we've already said we never established a final two. We already said that at some point we'll have to take each other out. So that means there's going to be certain things that we're going to keep from each other in the event that it affects us advancing in the game. So essentially, Shan just handed Ricard a huge gift, a huge bombshell, because he basically, all he had to do was one, win immunity, which he did, and two, shift the target off of himself onto Shan, which ended up working out because there was already issues within the group, and he knew Deshawn had the most conflict with Shan, so it would be easy to convince Deshawn because essentially, it was him and Danny's plan that got revealed. And so people are not understanding why Danny and Deshawn changed up and ultimately agreed to vote out Shan. But the issue was the trust was broken. The trust first was broken with Liana when she had snitched to Shan the blind side without having the proper context of everything. Without, thinking for a second, okay, Shan could potentially tell this immediately to Ricard and then this all can blow up. Like, there was no thought in terms of what the consequences, what potentially could happen if she did not just sit on it for a day or at least sit on it until after the immunity challenge. But anytime you give people ammo to, you give them a gift like that, of course they're going to, go extra hard in an immunity challenge if they think that they're at risk of being eliminated. So that was a huge, huge faux pas, huge error on Liana's part. And the other part of it is now with looking at the different exit interviews that the eliminated Islanders do, Danny revealed that they ended up having him and Shan a 45-minute conversation about this Ricard move. And ultimately, Shan was on board with voting him out. And even as like a last-ditch effort right before, I'm guessing the immunity challenge, before Ricard won immunity, Danny checked in one last time with Shan to confirm, that if he is still available after this immunity challenge, that they're going to vote out Ricard. And Shan was on board. Immediately after that, Liana goes to Shan and tells her that Deshawn and Danny are trying to blindside her. How can they blindside her if they're telling her exactly the plan to take out Ricard, which was the same exact plan they told you, Liana? So again, this just comes back around full circle to the original issue with the biggest issue that Deshaun and Shan had, which was communication, and ultimately it trickled down into other alliance members. Honestly, if we're being frank, the only person who was loyal to this alliance was Danny. He really was. He really wanted this alliance to go to Final Four, and there was just too much going on at once. Once Shan told Ricard the plan, the alliance was over. Because if you're not keeping, plans in place within the 4 people that you say is in this alliance, the trust is gone. You're including people that your alliance members want to vote out. So how is that going to be sustainable for a 4-person alliance if you're telling the actual targets who your alliance members want to take out? How is that productive? And then the worst part of it all is when Danny got eliminated and I watched his Ponderosa, I was so heated because Shan and Leanna were still upset about the Shan vote out. And I just didn't understand. I'm like, you told Ricard that he was going to be the target. And then Shan still was doubling down. Oh, he's my number 1 ally. I owe it to him to tell him, that he's going to be voted out. But Danny's whole thing is we are a 4-person alliance. If we are a 4-person alliance and this is a potential scenario, why are you telling the actual target? Even though he is your number 1, he didn't view you as his number 1 because it was easy for him once you told him that to flip the target to you. And so by that point, everybody was over Shan. Everybody was already upset. Deshaun didn't need convincing to take out Shan because she ratted out the plan. So why would he keep her around? And, like Danny said, at that point, the rest of the tribe was going to split the votes between Leanna and Shan, depending on whether or not Shan used her idol. And that was a wrap for the alliance. Because when you tell outside people, even though, you don't have to tell everything to your allies. And that's the whole thing. And that's where this alliance went wrong. Because there was loyalty within the alliance until Shan still prioritized her relationship with Ricard over the 4-person alliance. And when you do that, you're basically saying it's basically Ricard and then you guys. Because if you were truly in the 4-person alliance, you would have kept that a secret. You wouldn't have said anything at all. And then we might be talking about different circumstances here. We might be talking about a situation where somebody in the alliance is winning immunity instead of Ricard. Because Ricard doesn't have that ammo or that motivation to, go extra hard because he still thinks he's in that 4-person alliance with you guys and the Power 5, quote unquote. And so it's just like, it's decisions like that just completely torpedoed everybody else's game in the process. And I just couldn't believe that Liana had the nerve to be upset about Shan being voted out and saying that they cannibalized themselves when you and Shan cannibalized the alliance by blowing this whole thing up with Ricard. That was effectively the end of the alliance by telling the actual target that they're the target by your alliance members. And instead of you thinking that it would make Deshaun the target, it made the person who was at the top of the leaderboard the biggest threat, who has all the advantages, and made you the target. Why would they get rid of Deshaun when he's emotional and nobody likes him in the jury? Why would that's a waste of a tribal. Just like Liana was going hard wanting Xander out, and we see in these exit interviews that even with an idol, nobody found Xander to be a threat. Why waste a tribal on him? And they felt the same way about Heather. And it's like, so it's the way, it's so crazy because I'm so upset because this alliance had everything to just go straight to Final Four together and just battle it out and have, a guaranteed Black Survivor winner. But instead, ego, emotions, miscommunication, and prioritizing allies over the alliance was what did this alliance in. And it's just so unfortunate. And I hope fans that are watching this season truly learn that that is what it means to be in an alliance. And you can have side relationships with people, but ultimately, if your loyalty is to that 4-person alliance or to that 6-person alliance or whoever it is, that is the plan for the group of you to be that voting block until the end, until you guys get to the end, and then you guys can all battle it out amongst each other. But there was too many people trying to be the head of this alliance, and there was too much miscommunication and an already faulty communication within this alliance that ultimately did it in. And like I said, Danny was the only one that was loyal to this alliance until he didn't have a reason to be anymore. Because if you broke my trust, if you're telling the targets my plans, why am I going to keep you around? You're putting me in trouble. You're a liability now. Because now moving forward, anything I tell you about any potential future targets, you're going to tell them. You're going to go run tell them. So how can I keep you around after that? And yes, obviously it didn't work out because Liana and Danny ended up getting eliminated next. But what else were they supposed to do? The trust was now gone with Shan. And who's to say, even if they kept Shan, that the alliance would still remain intact if Shan was already vocalizing that day that she wanted Deshawn out? Meanwhile, there was already a plan in place to get her out. So she was already effectively ending the alliance anyways because she was upset, at Deshawn for coming up with this Ricard plan. But ultimately, by her preemptively just running to Ricard, it just ruined so many things. It truly did. And it just came back to bite. And that's why ultimately Shan was the first person out of the alliance that got voted out and sent to jury. Don't get me wrong. I like Shan's game. I liked her chaotic game that she played, but I have to keep it 100. I have to, assess the facts. And the facts are that particular week, there was so much arrogance and boasting on the part of Shan, and there was so much recklessness between Shan and Deshawn, airing out all of their dirty laundry in front of all of the other tribe mates, and opening that avenue for people to come in and infiltrate and break out that alliance. So those are my thoughts on that. Please let me know what you guys think. Whose fault do you think it is of the demise of this alliance? Do you think it was Shan's fault? Do you think it was Liana's fault? Do you think it was Deshawn's fault? Or do you think it was Danny's fault? And do you still think that even with Deshawn remaining, that he still has a path to the end? Because actually, I think he does. Because based off of these exit interviews, if it's true that the jury doesn't like him, why would you vote him out? Just like the jury doesn't like Xander, and they don't care for Heather and her game. So why would they be on anybody's radar to take out of the game at this point? That's somebody that you keep around as a goat because you know that nobody respects them. So those are all of my thoughts. Please do not forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and I will talk to you guys again very, very soon.